The snow had turned from powder to needles by the third day north of Winterfell. It came slantwise on a wind that had nothing of the Riverlands damp in it, only the dry, cutting chill of the deep north. It found the seams in cloaks and the cracks in men's armor, creeping under leather and wool until even the hardiest ranger's teeth clenched against it. Jon pulled his cloak tighter and hunched in the saddle. Frost had stiffened the horse's mane. Each breath steamed in thick gusts. Ghost ranged ahead, little more than a pale blur in the whirling white. Every so often Jon would lose sight of him completely, and a knot of cold would form in his gut until the dire wolf reappeared, shaking himself and snorting as if offended by the wind. "Your sky's trying to kill us," Tormund shouted over the gusts, his beard a mass of ice-clotted hair. "I liked it better when it only tried to freeze my arse, not flay my face." "You're the one who wanted to see the wall from this side," Jon called back. The words came out in ragged puffs. "It doesn't change just because you're tired of the cold." Era rode a little behind them, shoulders hunched, eyes narrowed against the sting of the ice. "Better than dead ground and whites at our heels," she said. "At least here the thing trying to kill us is honest." Ahead, the King's Road climbed a low rise. Jon knew, long before he could see anything, that beyond it the land would fall away, and the world would end in ice and stone. He'd stood atop the wall in storm and stillness both. He'd looked down at this stretch of road as a new sworn brother, wondering about the world beyond its edge. Now he came back with wildlings at his side, a king's words in his saddlebag, and ghosts enough in his head to fill the godswood. They crested the rise. The storm thinned, as if it, too, hesitated before the great white presence that loomed across the world. The wall reared from the earth like a frozen sea frozen mid-surge, a sheer cliff of blue-white and gray, the top lost in low clouds. Even from here Jon could feel its cold, a presence that pushed against his chest and stole his breath. "7 hells," one of the rangers muttered. "Every time I see it, I think it's grown." Tormund reined in beside Jon, squinting into the wind. For once, his constant humor ebbed. "Looks different from this side," he said quietly. "Less like a challenge and more like a judgment." "It's both," Jon said. Ghost had stopped at the base of the final slope leading up to Castle Black's gate. He stood stiff-legged, hackles just slightly raised, ears cocked. The scent on the air was familiar and unfamiliar both. Old wood smoke, baking bread, horses, men, and something else underlying it now, the faint, coppery tang of blood and burned flesh. "The fist," Jon murmured to himself, thinking of ravens and blotted words. "They brought it back here." He nudged his horse forward. "Crows first," he said. "Then we see if they'll have wildlings inside their walls." The outer yard of Castle Black was a churn of half-frozen mud and trampled snow. The wooden palisade that ringed it looked more battered than Jon remembered. The sharpened timbers scarred and splintered where something large had crashed against them. New repairs showed in raw, pale wood. As Jon's party came into view, horns sounded from the low watchtowers, short, wary blasts. Men appeared along the palisade's walkway, dark cloaks whipping in the wind. Some had bows. Others leveled spears, the points dark little teeth against the white. Even at this distance Jon could feel their suspicion, their fear sharpened into hostility. "Riders!" a voice called down. "Halt there!" Jon raised a hand to his own men and drew his horse up. Ghost padded to his stirrup and sat, head high, gaze fixed on the gate. The direwolf's presence drew a ripple of unease from the men on the wall. Bows wavered. One of the black-cloaked figures leaned forward, peering. "Is that Ghost?" "And this is Jon Snow," Jon shouted back. The wind tore at his words, but carried them nonetheless. "Bastard of Winterfell, brother of the Night's Watch, open the gate." There was a murmur along the palisade. Men shifted. One disappeared from view. A moment later, the heavy thunk of bolts being drawn sounded from within the gatehouse. "Hold!" Another voice snapped from above, sharper, older. "No one opens until we know who stands on our step." Bowen Marsh peered down, cheeks red with cold and drink both. His small eyes narrowed when he saw the furs at Jon's back, the rough armor, the giant silhouette of one further down the road, looming above the mists like some unsettling hill. "You left your post, Jon Snow," he called. "Marched with the wildlings, disappeared south without leave. Now you come back with them at your heels and expect us to raise our gates." "I come back with them at my side," Jon answered. "And with word from the king in the north, and from Mance Rayder's host. You can count the cost of turning us away in dead men later, if you like." Tormund shifted in the saddle, impatience crackling off him. "Tell your turnip lord to open the bloody gate, Crow," he muttered, "before I start wondering how hard it is to knock your wall down from this side." "Let me speak to the Lord Commander," Jon called up. "If you think me a deserter, you can put me in chains for him to judge. But if you leave me out here in the snow while you argue, you'll answer to him for that as well." More murmurs. Ahead, Jon recognized Dolorous Ed, appeared at Bowen's shoulder, eyes hollowed by new shadows. "Let him in," Ed said, voice flat. "If he's come back to kill us, he's late." Everyone else already had a turn. The gate began to rise. As the great oak and iron leaves creaked inward, the smell of Castle Black hit Jon full in the face. Wood smoke, ash, the tang of cold iron, and beneath it all the sour reek of fear and too many bodies in too small a space. "Welcome home," Ed said as Jon rode under the lintel. "You'll find it much the same as you left it, only worse." Ghost slipped ahead into the yard. Men in black turned to stare, hands tightening on spear shafts and sword hilts. Some faces brightened with recognition, others tightened. "This is going to be fun," Tormund said under his breath. "You crows are almost as bad as my folk with strangers." "We'll see who's stranger by the end of the day," Jon said. The hall at Castle Black felt smaller than Jon remembered. Perhaps it was the number of men crammed into it. Perhaps it was the weight of what those walls had seen. The return from the fist, the burning of corpses in the yard, the way the wind screamed around the towers now as if remembering the dead. Whatever the cause, the room that had once seemed drafty and half-empty now felt close, the air thick with smoke and the smell of boiled oats and sweat. Jeor Mormont sat at the high end of the nearest table, as he always had, his great bear's bulk wrapped in black. His hair had gone from gray to white, his lined face carved deeper by strain. The bear's head of House Mormont glowered from the pommel of his sword where it rested near his hand. Maester Aemon sat to his right, milky eyes turned toward the warmth of the fire. His thin hands were folded on the table, the veins standing out under papery skin. Beside him, a stack of scrolls bound with broken seals testified to nights spent listening to ravens more than to sleep. Jon stood before them, cloak dripping melted snow onto the flagstones. Ghost lay at his feet. The direwolf's ears twitched at every raised voice. Behind Jon, Tormund leaned against a beam with ostentatious nonchalance, his bright eyes taking in every man and every possible exit. The hall's benches were full. Black brothers crowded shoulder to shoulder, some still with bandages on wrists or brows from the fight at the fist, others newly come from Southron prisons or northern keeps. Their faces were a study in conflict. Recognition, suspicion, curiosity, fear. "You left your post," Bowen Marsh said, his voice edged. "You rode with the wildlings. You wore their furs. Now you return with them in tow. That is desertion, treason." Jon had expected no less. He kept his gaze on Mormont, not Marsh. "I went with them at your command at first," he said, "to learn their numbers, their plans. I came back with that knowledge and more besides." "You came back months late," Marsh snapped. "You went south. You took up arms in a king's war." "So did you," Jon said quietly. "When you sent men to Craster, when you marched to the fist, when you lit our own dead on fire."
"You chose.
"Only difference is I chose mine where they could make a difference." A murmur went through the benches. Some of it was disapproval. Some of it was bitter amusement. Dolorous Ed, near the back, sighed. "Leave me out of it," he muttered. "If I'd had any sense, I'd have chosen a nice warm grave years ago, Enough, Jeor Mormont said. The single word cut the hall's noise clean. He did not rise. He didn't need to. His presence filled the space without that. His dark eyes fixed on Jon, searching. You went beyond the wall, he said. You infiltrated Mance Rayder's host. You sent word back of his numbers and his plan to assail the wall with everything he could drag south of the Frostfangs. Then you vanished. His jaw clenched. We rode to the fist without you. We bled without you there. Why? Because there was another ambush waiting, Jon said. Not here, at the Twins. He took a breath. The words of this part always felt strange in his mouth, as if he were speaking someone else's story. Walder Frey meant to murder my brother under his roof, to destroy the North's chance at standing against the Lannisters, to make sure no one south of the wall had the strength to send men to your aid when Mance came. Jeor's brows drew down. And you stopped it. Tormund and I did, Jon said. He felt the weight of eyes on him. We rode south with a band of free folk. We warned Robb Stark. We exposed Frey's crossbows before they loosed. Walder Frey is dead. The Twins are under Stark garrison. Moat Cailin is taken back. Winterfell is retaken. A rustle ran around the hall, men shifting, heads turning, a few sharp intakes of breath. Even Marsh blinked, his mouth momentarily closing. Winterfell? Someone echoed. Truly. Jon said. Bolton's leavings are in chains or buried. Greyjoys who stayed are on their way here in ropes. If Robb keeps his word. The wolf flies over the gate again. Jeor's gaze did not leave Jon's face. You expect me to take that on trust, he said. On the word of a man who broke his vows and rode under wildling furs. Jon set his jaw. No, he said. I expect you to ask your ravens. He reached into his cloak, drew out a small leather case, and laid it on the table before the Lord Commander. The king in the north sends you his word, he said. Sealed. He offers you this, men when he can spare them, food when he can send it, and a promise that you will not stand alone when Mance comes. If you let us stand with you. Us, Tormund said. He pushed off the post, clapped a hand to his chest. The free folk, those you call wildlings, we're not fond of your wall, Crow Lord, but we're even less fond of dead things walking. You give my folk a strip of land to freeze their arses on south of your ice, and we'll fight on it when the dead come. That caused uproar. Voices rose. Protests, curses, startled laughter. Marsh half stood, face purple. Free folk on our side of the wall? He spluttered. In our lands? This is madness. They raid. They butcher. They live. Jon cut in. His voice was sharper than he intended. When the dead come, that's the only measure that matters. Breathing, holding a spear, fighting. He looked back to Mormont. You can hang me for desertion if you must, Lord Commander. You can put me back in black. You can send me to the ice cells. But listen to what I brought back before you decide. Please. Maester Aemon's blind eyes turned toward Jon's voice. His head tilted, listening. The boy is right about one thing, the old Maester said softly. We can pass sentence later, but we must hear the tale entire before we do. Jeor picked up the leather case, thumb rubbing over the broken wax with the faint impression of a direwolf. He turned it once, then set it as. Tell it then, he said. From the moment you left us at the fist until the moment you rode under my gate. Leave nothing out. His gaze flicked briefly to Tormund, to Ghost, to the wildling faces near the door. And the rest of you, he added, voice like gravel. Listen like your lives depend on it. They likely do. They spoke for hours. In the hall, Jon told the broad strokes. The ride south, Derek Holt's tales of the twins, Tormund's bargain, Walder's hall full of steel, the wrong notes of the Rains of Castamere and Ghost's howl, Freys falling from rafters, Walder's head rolling on his own floor, Moat Cailin after that, and the climb with Reed, Winterfell, flayed men, banners burned. He did not flinch from the blood he'd spilled or the vows he'd stretched. He did not pretend his choices had been clean. The hall listened, some with narrowed eyes, some with dawning understanding, some with something like awe. By the time he finished, men were slumped against benches in exhausted silence. Even Marsh had little to say. "Sleep on it," Jeor told them. "We'll decide the matter of Jon Snow's black in the morning. For tonight, no blades drawn over this. You hear me?" Grumbles of assent followed. Men drifted out in knots, muttering. Later, in the relative quiet of the library, Jon told the rest. Sam sat across from him, ink staining his fingers, his round face thinner than Jon remembered. There were fine new lines at the corners of his eyes, etched there by cold and fear and nights spent peering at old books in search of some forgotten weapon. "I thought you were dead," Sam blurted, not for the first time. "You went with the wildlings, then everything happened at the Fist, and you weren't there, and the birds." "I know," Jon said. "I'm sorry." Sam pushed his spectacles up his nose. "Sorry for not being dead is a strange apology, Jon. I'm sorry you had to face it without me," Jon clarified. "That you had to run with the ravens on your back and the dead on your heels. I should have been there." Sam shook his head vehemently. "No, you should have been exactly where you were. If what you say is true about Robb, about the twins, then if you'd been at the Fist, the wall would have no help coming. The north would be ashes. We'd be alone." Jon glanced around at the shelves, at the cracked leather spines and the dust motes turning in lamplight. "We still might be," he said. "Robb's word is one thing. Getting men here is another. He has his own wars." "Yes, but he knows now," Sam insisted. "They all do, from the look of it." He tapped the scroll. "We've had ravens from White Harbor, from Carhold, from the Dreadfort even, all asking if the tales from the Fist are true, if the dead truly walk. It matters that there's a Stark in Winterfell again to answer that, to say yes, to say we must stand." Ghost shifted under the table, letting out a low huff. Jon dropped a hand, fingers sinking into thick fur. "And you?" Jon asked. "How are you still here, Sam? I heard of crows falling on the march on the ride from the Fist. Men left behind. Men—" He didn't finish. Sam swallowed. "I ran," he said. "I ran with the birds. I fell. I cried. I lost one and thought the world was ending. Then Gren and Dolorous Ed picked me up and told me if I was going to die, I might as well do it where the ravens could eat me." A weak smile tugged at his mouth. "I suppose I survived out of sheer spite, and because Maester Aemon needed someone to misread old books at him." "You did more than that." Aemon's voice drifted from the chair by the fire. Jon had thought the old man asleep. "Samwell Tarly sent warnings to kings who do not listen and lords who do. He looks at ink and sees patterns. He has found hints of things the wall has not seen in long years." Aemon's blind eyes turned toward Jon. "And you, Jon Snow, bring word that those Southron kings have not yet destroyed themselves entirely. Between you both, perhaps we can buy a little time." "Time for what?" Jon asked. Aemon's thin shoulders lifted in the smallest of shrugs. "For men to remember that we are all the same in the dark," he said. "For walls to be mended, for swords to be sharpened. For a boy who once called himself bastard to decide whether he is more crow or wolf." Jon looked down at the maps scattered on the table of the wall of the gift of the lands beyond. "I don't know if I can be only one," he said. "Crow or wolf. I think I have to be both. For a while." "Then be both," Sam said simply. "The vows say you are the shield that guards the realms of men. It doesn't say which realms, or how many wolves you need at your back." Getting Tormund into the common hall had been the easy part. Getting him to shut up had proved harder. By the third cup of thin ale, the wildling had acquired a reluctant audience. Men in black shifted closer under the pretext of seeking warmth, drawn as much by his booming voice as by morbid curiosity. A few sat with their hands on knife hilts, just in case. "And there I was," Tormund was saying, gesturing large enough to threaten the rafters. "Hanging by one arm from a cliff, snow in my beard, wind up my arse, dead thing clawing at my boot, and this skinny crow shouting at me about handholds as if I hadn't been climbing rocks since before he pissed standing up. You tried to kick me off the cliff." Jon pointed out from his seat against the wall. But only because you were in my way, Tormund retorted. Anyway, I got us both up, didn't I? Ghost lay between them and the nearest cluster of black brothers, head on his paws, red eyes half-lidded. Men still flinched when his gaze slid their way, but the direwolf's presence kept hands away from blades as surely as any order. Dolorous Ed sat across from Tormund, tankard in hand, expression as perpetually gloomy as ever. So you lot live beyond the wall, Ed said. In the snow. On purpose. Tormund nodded proudly. No walls to hide behind. Just sky and wind and whatever you can steal from the crows. And now you want to live down here. Ed squinted into his ale. Where the food is bad and the beds are worse and the nights are full of dead things and worse. He sighed. You're madder than we are. Maybe, Tormund said, but I'm not stupid enough to stand on the wrong side of the ice when the dead come. Up there, my folk are in the stew. Down here, we're at least nearer the edge of the pot. A few men snorted despite themselves. One younger brother, barely grown, cheeks still fleshy with the last of boyhood, frowned. My father always said wildlings were savages, he said. That you'd gut us in our beds if we turned our backs. My father always said crows were cowards who sent bastards and criminals to die in the cold, Tormund replied. He shrugged. Turns out some of you can fight. Some of mine can be taught not to steal every goat they see. Maybe our fathers were both idiots. A rough chuckle went around the circle, the tension eased by a hair's breadth. You raided my uncle's steading, another man muttered. Took 3 sheep and one of the girls. Tormund squinted. Was she willing? He asked. I don't know, the man admitted after a moment. Then I wasn't there, Tormund said. If she'd been willing, I'd remember. He took another drink. Look, I won't stand here and tell you every free folk man is a saint. Half of them can't even spell the word. But there's one thing we all agree on. We don't fancy being corpses that don't stay down. Same as you. That's better common cause than half the oaths your pretty lords swear. Jon watched the exchange from the edge of the firelight. The black brothers' faces were a study in reluctance and grim recognition. They had bled on the fist. They had seen dead friends get up again with blue eyes and clawed hands. Prejudice didn't stand long against that. He caught Jeor Mormont's eye across the hall. The Lord Commander sat with his back to the wall, tankard untouched, watching. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't ordering blades drawn either. First step, Jon thought. Then the next. The next morning they went up. The cage rattled and creaked on its way to the top of the wall, chains grinding in their housings. The wind met them halfway, cold as knives, slicing through cloaks and skin. Snow swirled in eddies along the ice face, snatched away and flung out over the emptiness. Jeor stood with his hands clasped behind his back, feet planted wide in the swaying cage as if on a ship's deck. Jon and Tormund balanced opposite. Bowen Marsh clung to the mesh with white knuckles. When the cage jerked to a stop at the top and the door clanged open, the wind punched Jon full in the chest. He stepped out onto the uneven ice and felt, as he always did, the strange mixture of awe and insignificance. From up here, the world looked very small. To the south, the King's Road snaked away into haze, the line of Castle Black's roofs huddled against the base of the wall like chicks under a hen's wing. To the north, the forest rolled away in a dark, endless carpet, broken only by white clearings and the twisted scars of old burns. And beyond the first thick belt of trees, the fires began. They were scattered at first, here a small cluster, there a single coal of orange in the blue gloom. Further out they thickened, coalescing into a field of light that flickered and pulsed, stretching away toward the horizon like a second, fallen sky. Mance Rayder's host, Tormund's face had gone grim. More than when I left, he said. He's gathered stragglers, clans that stayed behind. Every fool who thought their cave was safe until the dead came knocking. Any idea how many? Jeor asked. Tormund squinted into the distance. Hard to say from here. 50,000 when I rode with them. Maybe more now. half of them children and old ones and those who can barely hold a spear. He snorted. The other half can kill like winter. Bowen Marsh made a strangled sound. 50. This is madness, he said. We have a few hundred men fit for the wall. Even with whatever allies the North can send, we can't stand against that. We're not meant to stand alone anymore, Jon said. He gestured southward. Robb's raven. He'll move when the snow allows. The free folk can't all stay up there when Mance pushes. They don't want to. They'll come to us if we open gates instead of only drawing bows. Letting the wildlings through the wall, Marsh breathed. Somewhere, the first builders are spinning in their graves. Somewhere, the first builders are grateful anyone's still up here, Jeor said curtly. Enough, he turned to Jon. What would you do? You've seen their camp from inside. You know these people. Jon swallowed, eyes still on the distant fires. We thin them if we can, he said. Raids, harass their scouts, cut down whites before they join the host. But we don't waste men on charges for glory. We hold the wall. We use height and stone. And we talk. Talk, Marsh repeated. To Mance, Jon said. He's not blind. He knows what walks behind him. He'd rather break this wall than beg at its gates. But if we offer him something else, a path through, for those who won't fight us, land beyond, a queen or king in the north willing to treat, he might listen. You think he'll trust a crow, Jeor said. I think he'll trust that his people will die if he doesn't, Jon replied. He knows the dead fight for nothing. He wants his folk to live. That's something we share. The wind tore at his words, flinging them out over the forest. Far below, Mance's fires flickered. Indifferent. Ravens first, Jeor said. Then words on the wind. Then we see if the king beyond the wall is as reasonable as you think. Ravens flew that afternoon. They rattled in their cages as Sam and Aemon worked, the maester's old voice steady as he dictated, Sam's quill scratching over parchment. Jeor's solar was cramped and smoky. Walls hung with faded hunting tapestries and maps inked in Mormont's own rough hand. To Robb Stark, king in the north, Aemon said. We confirm receipt of your message. The Night's Watch acknowledges the threat you describe and the aid you offer. If you can spare men, send them. If you can spare grain, send that too. But know this, time is short. The host of the free folk mass beyond our walls, and something worse mass behind them. He paused, sightless eyes turning toward the draft where the raven's feathers rustled. To any lord of the north who still holds a hall or a hearth, he continued. The tales you have heard from the fist of the first men are true. The dead walk. They do not tire. Iron does not stop them. Fire and dragonglass do. If you have read this far, you have already chosen to turn your face toward the danger instead of away. Remember, then, the wall does not protect you. Men on the wall do. If you have any care for the realm, show it with more than words. Sam's hand shook slightly as he wrote. Ink blotted where his quill hesitated. And to Mance Rayder, Aemon said softly. Jon stiffened. This we write. The old maester went on, voice taking on a different cadence. You name yourself king beyond the wall. We name ourselves the watch that has stood long as your people have walked. Between us stands ice and habit and old blood. Behind you, however, stands only death. You know this. We know this. He inclined his head toward where he knew Jon stood. Jon Snow, once our brother, now returned, tells us you are not a fool, Aemon said. He says you want your people to live. We want the same for the realms of men. So we offer this. Send word. Speak. There must be a way for flesh and breath to pass through this wall that does not end in slaughter on either side. That's not much of a promise, Tormund grumbled. It's more than he's ever had, Jon said. And less than he wants, Tormund countered. But he'll hear it. He's watched enough of his folk freeze for nothing. Sam sanded the letters, hands clumsy with haste. Aemon sealed Robb's with black wax and the direwolf stamp. Jeor pressed the watch's own raven seal into the letters meant for other lords. The one to Mance he left unsealed, tied instead with plain leather. "Words on parchment," Jeor said, watching the ravens flutter. "We'll see how far they fly." Far to the north, a raven dropped from the sky like a scrap of night displaced. It circled once over the sprawl of Mance Rayder's camp, then twice, then folded its wings and arrowed down toward the central fire. Men looked up, shading eyes against the snow. Children pointed. The bird flared its wings at the last moment and landed, claws catching on a rough-carved post. Mance watched it with narrowed eyes. He wore no crown, no sigil beyond the patchwork cloak at his shoulders. Black silk, golden wool, a strip of red velvet, a square of rough-spun hide, a life told in stolen cloth. Snow clung to his stubble, melted in his hair. There was weariness in the set of his shoulders that no amount of firelight could burn away. Val stood at his side, white blonde hair braided back, bow slung over one shoulder. Her gaze was sharp, scanning the edges of the camp even as Mance reached for the bit of parchment tied to the raven's leg. "Another from the dead things?" one of the captains asked, a lean then with scarred cheeks. "No," Mance said. "They don't send birds. They just send cold." He untied the strip of leather and unrolled the letter. The script was neat, measured, the work of someone used to writing in cramped spaces in bad light. There was no seal, only words. He read, lips moving silently. "From the Night's Watch?" Val asked. "From a blind man with more sight than most," Mance said. "And from Jon Snow, if I know his clumsy turns of phrase." He read again more slowly, tasting each line. "We name ourselves the watch that has stood long as your people have walked. Between us stands ice and habit and old blood. Behind you, however, stands only death. You going to show that around?" Rattleshirt drawled from the other side of the fire, bones on his armor clicking. "Or keep it tucked in your bedroll for when the cold gets lonely?" Mance glanced at him. "If I thought you could read, I'd let you," he said. "As it is, you'll have to make do with the sound of it." He lifted the letter a little so the firelight fell across it. "They offer talk," he said. "They offer not a welcome, not yet, but the idea that some of us might pass the wall with more to show for it than arrow holes." Murmurs went up, some skeptical, some bitter, some hopeful, though those voices were quieter. "You think it's not a trap?" the then asked. "I think if the crows wanted to kill us, they'd wait on their wall and let the dead do their work for them," Mance said. "They're stubborn, not stupid." He folded the parchment. "And I think Jon Snow has his hand in this. The boy has a knack for being in the way of destiny." Val's mouth quirked. "You always did like your crows clever," she said. "I like my people alive," Mance corrected. He looked out over his camp. The ragged tents, the huddled shapes around fires, the shivering lines of children being given thin broth. "If there's a crack in that wall that isn't just ice, I have to at least look." Rattleshirt snorted. "You'll end up with a rope round your neck." "Perhaps," Mance said. "Or perhaps I'll end up with a path." He looked north, beyond the furthest fires, to the darkness where the dead marched. "The dead are coming either way. Better to walk into a crow's hall on my feet than wait to meet them on my knees." He tucked the letter into his belt. "Send word back," he told a nearby boy. "Find a raven not too stupid to remember the way. We'll talk." Days settled into an uneasy rhythm. The watch could not stop its duties to accommodate politics. Men still stood their turns on the wall, eyes watering in the wind, fingers numb on bowstrings. Fires still needed feeding, latrines digging, gear mending. The dead beyond the trees did not pause while crows argued with wildlings. Between watches, they trained. The practice yard rang with the familiar clack of wood on wood, the grunt of exertion, the occasional yelp when someone failed to move fast enough. What was new was who stood across from whom. A rangy free folk spearwoman circled a black brother with a short sword, feet light on the packed snow. She feinted at his face, then rapped him smartly on the knee when his guard went up. He cursed, more in surprise than anger, then grinned around split lips and came at her again. "Keep your feet under you, Crow," Tormund bellowed from the edge of the yard. "The ground's your only friend. Falls on you enough as it is. No need to help it." Nearby, a then with tattooed brow was showing Gren the proper way to set a spear against a charge, hands correcting grip without comment on the black cloak. On the other side of the yard, a pair of wildling youths traded blows with a tall lad from the Fingers, their laughter startling in its lightness. Not all mixed so easily. "You hit like a milkmaid," one crow sneered at a free folk man half his size. The smaller man smacked him in the face with his shield so fast the words barely left his mouth. Jon watched, weighing every interaction. Where tension flared, he stepped in, a word here, a correction of stance there. He paired men deliberately. Those most likely to throw fists kept too busy with swords to spare their hands. Those who would sulk were given responsibility, watching the gate, counting arrows. "Some of them will never like it," Sam murmured at his elbow, Cole scratching as he made notes on a scrap of parchment. Numbers, pairings, the beginnings of some ledger only he fully understood. But they'll fight. That's something. "They'll have to fight together," Jon said. "If they don't, they'll fight alone. That's just another kind of death." Ghost sprawled near a pile of shields, tongue lolling, apparently unconcerned. In truth, Jon knew the direwolf was taking in everything. The smell of sweat and snow, the cadence of voices, the sharp metallic tang on the air whenever someone's practice cut went a little too deep. From the wall came the occasional horn call. Once short, once long, signaling patrols, nothing more. No alarms. Not yet. But the fires beyond the tree line still burned whenever Jon climbed to look. And one morning he saw a change. A single white scrap against the dark. A flag, raised on a pole just beyond the range of arrows. He knew, even from that distance, whose idea that had been. "Talk, then," he murmured. "Let's see if the wall remembers how." They met in the shadow of the wall. Not atop it. Jeor had refused that, and not beyond the treeline, where any parley would be one arrow away from disaster. Instead, they chose a narrow, windswept strip of stone north of the gate, where the wall's immense bulk loomed at their backs and the forest stood a bowshot beyond. Snow squeaked under boots as Jon walked out with Tormund at his side. Ghost ghosted along, fur rippling in the wind, seeming almost to glow against the ice-dark stones. Behind them came a small escort of brothers, men Jeor trusted not to loose an arrow from fear. Opposite, Mance Rayder approached with a handful of chosen. Val walked at his shoulder, bow unstrung but close at hand. The then with the scarred cheeks moved like a coiled spring. A few other faces Jon recognized from his time in the host. Riel of the Frozen Shore, a rangy woman with frost-burned scars on her cheeks. An old man from the Skirling Pass whose stories had kept a dozen fires warm. Mance stopped a few paces short of Jon and looked up at the wall. "Every time I see it," he said, "it looks more foolish and more necessary at once." "Same could be said of crowns," Jon replied. Mance's mouth quirked. "You've found your tongue since last we spoke, Snow." "You've given me more to speak for," Jon said. They regarded one another for a long heartbeat. Then Mance nodded toward Ghost. "I see you kept the wolf," he said. "I'd have been disappointed if you'd traded him for a lion." "I've traded nothing," Jon said. "I've added wolves, crows, free folk, kings, all tangled up, whether we like it or not. Dragons next, perhaps," Val murmured. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Tormund said. "One disaster at a time." Mance's gaze flicked to the wall, then to the campfires still burning beyond his shoulder. "The dead press us," he said without preamble. "We lose fires to them every week. Men go to piss and don't come back. Children vanish if they stray beyond the edge of the light. We can't stay where we are. We can't let 50,000 men and more pour over the wall at once," Jon replied. "If we open our gates and you storm them, the watch is finished. The North will see nothing but raiders. Any chance of standing together dies with us. So we're at a stalemate," Mance said. "I have more people than you have arrows. You have more stone than I have time. We have something else," Jon said. "Land. Empty land. Villages burned when you raided years ago. Fields fallow because men went south to die in a lion's war. The gift is half empty. The new gift too. There's room. Room for some, Mance said. Not all. And not without blood. There will be blood either way, Jon said. Here's what we offer. You bring your folk in small bands, not all at once. Families, those who'll swear, not to kneel, but to hold no blade against the Watch or the North. They settle in the gift with our eyes on them. In return, when the dead come in strength, they stand with us on these walls. He nodded to Tormund. Your word, and men like you to see it kept. And those who won't swear? Val asked. Those who would rather raid than live find no welcome, Jon said. They can stay on your side of the trees and take their chances with the cold. Mance was quiet for a long time. The wind howled. Snow eddied between them. Crows and free folk sharing fires, he said finally. Never thought I'd see the day. You may not, Tormund said cheerfully. We might all die tomorrow. Comforting as always, Mance murmured. He looked at Jon again. You speak for the Watch, Snow. But do you speak for the wolf in Winterfell too? I do, Jon said. And for the men with flayed men on their banners? Mance's head tilted. Rumors reach even us. Bolton plays a deep game. Bolton will be dealt with, Jon said. One war at a time. Mance huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. Very well, he said. We'll test your offer. I'll send 100 families to your gate. Old ones, children, those with more to gain from living than from dying with a spear in hand. See how your brothers take to them. See how your Wolf King reacts when free folk plow his fields. He extended his hand. Jon hesitated only a moment before taking it. The shake was firm and brief. No oaths, no grand declarations. Only a rough grip in the cold between men who both knew how thin the ice under them was. Above, the wall loomed implacable. Behind Mance, the fires of his host flickered. Behind Jon, the black bulk of Castle Black stood against the snow. None of it would be enough on its own. But for the first time in thousands of years, a king beyond the wall and a man of the Night's Watch stood on the same side of the line and spoke of more than death. They came in ones and twos at first, then by tens. The first band of free folk Mance sent south under the new bargain looked nothing like the raiding parties the Watch had fought for generations. There were spears among them, yes, and hard-eyed men and women who moved like they belonged in the wild. But they were outnumbered by those who could not fight. Women with babes bound tight to their chests, old men leaning on sticks, children peering out from under two big hoods. Snow drifted down in lazy veils as they reached the base of the wall. The wind worried at their cloaks, tugging here and there like an impatient hand. A few of the children stared up, necks craned, at the vast sheet of ice that vanished into cloud, eyes wide with a mingling of fear and awe. This is it? A brother on the rampart muttered. This is the terror of the tales? Afraid of the 50,000 behind them, not these, another answered. Jon stood just beyond the shadow of the gate, cloak drawn tight, ghost pressed to his leg. Tormund loomed at his side, bright-eyed despite the cold. Black brothers watched from the palisade, fingers tight on bowstrings, knuckles pale through their gloves. The free folk halted a few paces away, as if an invisible line lay between them and the gate. A gray-haired woman stepped forward, a child clutching her skirt. Her face was weathered as old bark, her eyes winter-pale and stubborn. You're the crow who thinks he's a wolf, she said. Mance says you speak for both. I speak for the Watch, Jon said. And for the North that means to stand with it. No one here expects you to kneel, only to keep your blades turned the same way ours are when the dead come. Dead already came, she said. Took my man, 3 of my sons. That's why I'm here, Crow. I've no love for your wall, but I've less for blue eyes in the dark. Then we're on the same side, Jon said. Behind him, the gate creaked. Chains rattled. The great oak and iron leaves began to swing inward. Bowen Marsh glowered by the winch, face pinched. We can't feed them, he muttered. We barely feed ourselves. They're going to the gift. Jeor's voice rumbled. The Lord Commander had come to the gate despite the cold, bear cloak whipping. Villages stand empty, fields lie fallow. Better to have someone plowing them than leave them for the dead to take. And if they raid? Marsh shot back. Then we deal with it, Jeor said. His gaze cut to Jon Snow. Jon stepped aside, holding out one gloved hand in invitation. Come, he told the woman and the folk behind her. You're seen now. That cuts both ways. Remember it. The first of the free folk walked under the wall. Ghost watched them pass, nose working. Some flinched from his gaze. Others reached out quickly to brush thick white fur as if to steal a sliver of his luck. Above, a crow on the rampart spat into the snow. Feels like letting the storm inside, he said. Storm's already in, Ed replied gloomily. This is just us pretending we own the roof. Harwood had been little more than a smudge on old maps. The village crouched where the hills softened into the first fingers of the true north. A ring of stone cottages around a frozen well. Most of the roofs sagged. One had fallen in entirely. A low wall of piled rocks marked the edge of fields now buried under snow, furrows only barely visible as faint ridges. Jon remembered passing through once as a boy on the road to the wall, when stubborn families still clung on. Those people were gone now, claimed by war, hunger, or Lord's summons. Only their ghosts remained. A cracked wooden cart half buried at the edge of the track. A horseshoe still nailed over a sagging lintel. A child's broken hoop tangled in dead grass. It'll do, the gray-haired wildling woman decided, surveying the houses. Stone keeps the wind out. Better than canvas. Better than running. Walls make some folk nervous, Tormund said. But even I'll admit they're good when the sky's trying to flay your skin off. Black brothers and northern rangers watched from the edges of the clearing. Men in black, men in gray, blades in hand, faces set. Their expressions were not welcoming, but they were not entirely hostile either. Suspicion warred with curiosity, with exhaustion. Free folk began to unload their lives. Bundles came off sleds. Dented pots, hacked apart bits of furniture, leather bags of parched grain, rolled furs. One woman unwrapped a bundle with exaggerated care. Inside lay only a small carved figure, a little wooden bear with its ears rubbed smooth by countless fingers. Children clustered around the well, stomping their feet, breath steaming. One pointed at the pump handle, brow furrowed. Water comes from that? He whispered. If the ground's not too frozen solid. A black brother answered before he could stop himself. You'll see when the thaw comes. The boy eyed him warily, then nodded, as if the crow had granted some minor magic. Near the half-ruined smithy, a free folk boy wrestled with an uncooperative door. It stuck halfway, warped by damp. A northern farm lad, not much older, watched for a moment, then strode over and put his shoulder to the wood. Latch catches here, he grunted. You have to lift it while you push. Between the two of them, the door gave. The wildling blinked, surprise flickering across his face. Thanks, he said. The northerner shrugged. If it falls on you, I have to drag your corpse out of my house, he said. Less trouble this way. Jon heard it, tucked it away. What do we tell the lords when they ride past and see wildlings in their fields? One ranger muttered as Jon passed. Tell them the truth, Jon said, that these folks stand between them and blue eyes, that the land belongs to the living, whoever they were before. Ghost padded ahead of him, nose low, tail level. Snow swirled, muffling sound. Harwood would never be what it once was, but for the first time in years, smoke rose from more than one chimney. For now, Jon thought, for as long as we can buy them. News of wildlings south of the wall reached Winterfell on wings that had never known snow that far down. The raven arrived close to dusk. Robb read the message by the hearth in the great hall, firelight gilding the edges of the parchment. Caitlin watched his face as his eyes moved. She saw surprise, wariness, thought. How bad? She asked when he finished. He handed her the letter. Not bad, he said. Not yet, just strange. It was Aemon's hand, neat and careful despite age. The Maester spoke of free folk settlers in the gift, of empty villages filled again, of an arrangement struck between watch, wolf, and wild, settling those who once raided our flocks and fields that once fed our own, Caitlin murmured when she finished. It smacks of madness. Or necessity, Howland Reed said softly. He had been sitting half in shadow, as he preferred, but now he leaned forward into the firelight. You cannot defend empty land, my lady. Someone will live there. Better they be pointed at the true enemy than at your barns. Robb rubbed at the back of his neck. They need grain, he said. The watch, they always do, and men. But this says more. He tapped the parchment. Mance Rayder is sending old and young through the gates, not spears. That means he believes the dead will fall on any stragglers he leaves behind. The dead, Caitlin repeated. The word still sat awkwardly on her tongue. I keep hearing that word from walls that used to send only talk of wildlings and weather. Now your brother writes of others and whites as if he were reciting house names. He's seen them, Robb said. That's more than most of us can say. If he says letting former raiders plow the gift might save lives when winter truly falls. He trailed off, thoughtful. From the high hooks, the new direwolf banner stirred in a draft. Its gray cloth was bright against the smoke-scarred wall, a defiant blot of life over old char. Umber will howl, Caitlin said. Karstark's men are half mad with grief already. Bolton, she grimaced. Roose will smile that little smile and say very little, which is worse. He already knows, Robb said quietly. If a raven reached me, one reached him. He'll be weighing which way the wind blows and whether he can stand in it without freezing. Can you trust these wildlings? One of the lesser lords at the end of the table asked, brow furrowed. Robb looked at Jon's neat script beneath Aemon's. I don't know if I need to trust them, he said. I need them hungry enough to hold a spear when the dead come, instead of trying to steal bread from my people. If feeding them now buys that later, then it's a price we have to consider paying. Caitlin lowered the letter, eyes shadowed. The world has turned upside down, she murmured. Once, men worried over which lord sat nearest the king. Now we argue over where to put wildlings so the walking dead don't get to them first. Ned would have said we argue so we don't freeze, Robb said. He'd have listened to Aemon, and to Jon. His mouth tightened. So will I. Far to the east, another lord read a similar letter with very different eyes. The Dreadfort's great hall was lit by a cold, steady light from tall, narrow windows and by torches that smoked but shed little warmth. Flayed men leered from banners high on the wall, their pale flesh picked out in careful detail. Roose Bolton sat like a shadow given shape in his high-backed chair, a simple cup of wine resting in his long, pale fingers. A servant knelt at his feet, reading Aemon's words in a quavering voice. And so we write to all lords of the north to tell them that free folk now till the earth in the gift, at the sufferance of the watch and under the promise of the king in the north, that all may stand against the dead who rise. Silence followed the last word. Ramsay Bolton lounged at his father's side, one hand playing idly with the hilt of a thin-bladed knife. His eyes were bright and cruel, his smile as fine and sharp as a cat's. Savages in our fields, he said. Skins in our barns that no one flayed for us. And your boy king allows this. Roose's gaze rested on the banner opposite, the flayed man and its triumphant leer. My boy king has reclaimed Winterfell, he said mildly. He holds the Twins and the river crossings. He has wolves at his back and the river lords at his side. He sipped his wine. If he wants to scatter wildlings in the gift like chicken feed, we will nod and speak of his mercy. For now, Ramsay's hand stilled. For now, he echoed. The dead do not care whose fields they walk through, Roose went on, nor whose men they make into puppets. If the Watch and Starks have found a way to add more living bodies to our side of the ledger, even if those bodies once stole sheep, we may all benefit. Or we may all bleed slower. His eyes flicked to Ramsay very briefly. In either case, we do not show our teeth until we know where the jaws will close. Ramsay's knife twirled again. "I don't like sharing my hunting grounds," he said. "You may not have many left to hunt in if the others break the wall," Roose replied. "Even your dogs cannot eat snow." The thought seemed to amuse Ramsay briefly. "Maybe they can eat a few crows first," he mused, "just to see the color of their bones." Roose said nothing. But when the servant had left, he signaled for parchment and ink. To Castle Black, he wrote in his tidy, precise hand, "Roose Bolton, Warden of the Dreadfort, offers aid where he may. Men to stand the wall. Grain where it can be spared. No mention of flayed men. No mention of Jon Snow. No mention of the calculations that never stopped behind his pale eyes." He sealed the letter with gray wax and the flayed man's sigil. "If wildlings till the gift," he thought, "and Starks freeze on the wall, there will be room for other banners when the thaw comes. If there is a thaw." It didn't take long for the first cracks to show in Harwood's uneasy peace. One afternoon, Jon rode in with a small patrol to find the entire village gathered near the well, voices raised, anger sharpening the air as keenly as any blade. "You took them!" a farmer shouted, face red under his beard. He jabbed a calloused finger at a wiry wildling with a single thick braid and a fox pelt on his shoulders. 3 hens, gone from the coop. Tracks in the snow, clear as day, right to your door. The wildling's chin lifted. "Your hens?" he scoffed. "They were scratching in the snow. No mark on them, no rope, no brand. How are they yours? The snow doesn't belong to you." "The coop does," the farmer snapped. "The feed does. I shoveled the shit. I built the roost. A black brother stood between them, looking desperately like a man who wished he'd drawn latrine duty instead. "We could share," he tried, "or pay in grain." "Grain we don't have," the farmer said. "Grain we brought," the wildling shot back. "You'd starve as quick as us without our hunting. We share what we kill. Why not your birds?" Jon pushed through the ring of bodies, Ghost slipping ahead with a low growl that quieted a few tongues. "What happened?" Jon asked. Both men started talking at once. He held up a hand. "One at a time," he said. "Farmer first." The man took a breath. 3 hens," he said. "Gone. I followed the prince. They go straight to his door." He jerked a thumb at the wildling. "He says if I wanted to keep them, I should have slept in the coop with them." The free folk man snorted. "If a beast feeds itself off open ground, it's whoever takes it first," he said. "That's how it's always been. We never had fences up there, only cliffs and cold. You want a thing, you hold it. And down here," Jon said, "we live long enough to need more than one harvest. Those birds lay eggs. Those eggs become more birds. If we treat them like wild game, we eat well once and starve later." He looked between them. "Here's the law then," he said slowly. "If a thing lives inside a fence or under a roof, it belongs to the one who built that fence or roof. If it lives outside, it's whoever catches it. You took from inside." He met the wildling's eyes. "So you bring the hens back, alive if you can manage it, and you help mend that coop so foxes, dead things, and children alike have a harder time getting in." The man bristled. "And what do I get for my trouble?" he demanded. "A share of the eggs next season if there's plenty," Jon said. "And a neighbor who doesn't reach for a pitchfork every time you pass his door." Murmurs ran through the gathered folk. A few chuckled. Someone muttered that it was about damn time someone made a rule. The wildling eyed the farmer, then Ghost, then Jon. "Fine," he said at last. "But if he names the hens, I'm eating them out of spite." Later, as the two of them chased outraged birds around a half-mended coop, Jon noticed a smaller exchange. On one side of a sagging fence, a free folk boy held a crude wooden eagle. On the other, a northern boy clutched a carved horse. They stared at each other, unblinking. Then, very solemnly, the free folk boy held out the eagle. After a heartbeat, the northern boy extended the horse. The trade was made without a word. Ghost watched from a porch, tail thumping once before he settled his head on his paws again. Not much, Jon thought. But more than nothing, the dead did not care about hens or toy trades. North of the wall, in the deep spruce forests where snow lay in drifts taller than a man and the wind whispered secrets through branches older than some kingdoms, a free folk patrol went out and did not return. At first, no one in Mance's camp fretted. Patrols were late all the time. A storm might have turned them back. A kill might have slowed them if they'd found something worth skinning and sharing. Then a lone figure staggered into the outer ring of fires, half collapsing into the light. He was a big man, broad in shoulder, his fox fur cloak torn and rimed with ice. Blood had frozen in stiff fans down his front. His eyes were too wide. "Gone," he gasped. "They're gone." Mance was at his side in strides that belied his age. "Who?" he demanded. "How many?" "All of them," the man panted. "We were 6. Now." His hands opened and closed, as if still grasping for something. They came out of the trees. No sound, no breath. Steel slid off them like water. "We hit them and they didn't stop," he sagged, shaking. Val put a steadying hand on his arm. "Did they follow you?" she asked. The man swallowed. "They're waiting," he whispered. "Watching." I could feel their eyes on my back the whole way. As if to prove him right, the air itself seemed to grow sharper. The fire nearest them guttered, its flames bending inward as if something enormous had drawn breath. Frost bloomed along the ground beyond the last ring of light, a thin, crystalline lace crawling over dead grass and old snow. Between the trunks of the nearest trees, shapes stood, tall and still and wrong. Their eyes glowed an eerie electric blue. "They're closer," Mance said under his breath. "Too close." Behind the blue eyes, darker shapes shifted whites, their outlines blurred by the drifting snow. Every instinct Mance had honed as a raider told him to charge. To show these things free folk did not cower. But he'd seen men throw themselves against that kind of cold and shatter. "Double the watches," he ordered instead. "No one steps outside the firelight alone. No one pisses without a spear at his back. At first light, we move further south." Rattleshirt sneered. "Toward the crows. Toward the only wall left," Mance said. "We keep running in circles out here. We'll give the dead all the practice they need." He looked past the frost-rimmed shadows toward where he knew the wall loomed, unseen but felt. "Wake up, crow boy," he muttered, thinking of Jon Snow and ravens and handshakes in the lee of ice. "We're running out of distance." By the time the next raven from the wall arrived, the map in Jeor Mormont's solar looked like a battlefield in miniature. Stones and scraps of bone marked castles and keeps. Smaller pebbles sat where gift villages and new free folk settlements had sprung up. Charcoal smudges showed where whites had been sighted. A few darker crosses marked confirmed encounters. Jeor's knuckles were swollen and red where he'd rapped them against the table one too many times. Bowen Marsh's ink-stained fingers hovered over the food tallies at the edge of the parchment, as if he might will more grain into existence. Jon studied the latest note. "Mance is pulling his people closer," he said. "His outer fires go out. The dead push in. Patrols don't come back whole. Then he'll push at us sooner," Marsh said. "More reason not to waste time playing at farmer in the gift." "It isn't play," Jon said. "Harwood proved that. Free folk and farmers stood together there. If it had been only one or the other, the village would be ash." Tormund scratched at his beard. "He's right," he said. "You crows know your walls. My folk know the woods. Together, we made those dead things pay to step on that well." Sam nodded, hovering at the edge of the table, book clutched to his chest. "The old histories talk about lines of resistance," he said. "Not just the wall. Outposts, watchfires, places where the dead were slowed, not stopped. It's the same pattern. We're just drawing it on a different map." Jeor grunted. "And still we need more men to hold those lines," he said. His gaze shifted to Jon. "You said Robb Stark would send steel, not just words." "He will," Jon said. "But he's only one king with one battered realm. He can't march Winterfell itself up here. Then we squeeze every drop of use out of what we have, Jeor said. He stabbed a finger at the space between the wall and the nearest free folk camp. Mixed patrols here. Crows, free folk, northern lads. Let them learn each other's ways while they hunt. They bring back news, dead, and fewer bad surprises. And someone has to go south and remind the wolf that our need hasn't lessened, Bowen Marsh said sourly. We send ravens, they drown in snow. We send letters, they get lost in Freys and flayed men. Jeor's eyes went to Jon again. You crossed that ground once already, he said. You know the neck. You know how to speak to your king brother about dead things without seeing him laugh in your face. You'll go. Jon felt the old pull again, tugging in two directions at once, north to the wall, south to Winterfell. You're sending me away, he said. I'm sending you where your mouth will do more good than your sword, Jeor replied. For once, take a small party. Your wolf. Bring back more than words if you can. Tormund snorted. I'll stay, he said. Someone's got to make sure your crows don't eat each other while the wolf's away. And someone's got to be loud enough to wake the dead before they get too close, Ed added dourly. Jon laid a hand on Ghost's head. Back to Winterfell, he thought. Back to Robb. Back to tell them the stories are walking. Aloud he said, I'll go. The second time Jon rode through Winterfell's gates in as many months, he did so in black again. The King's Road south from Castle Black had been marginally kinder in winter's teeth than it had been on his way north. Free folk in Harwood and another village had given his small party fires and thin stew along the way. Northern foresters had shared news and wary hospitality. Winterfell rose out of the white like a half-healed scar. The worst of the damage had been mended. Scaffolds still clung to some walls, but fewer than before. The broken tower's jagged crown had been capped in new stone. Smoke rose from more chimneys now. The smell of baking bread mingled with forge iron and the faint, comforting mineral tang of hot springs. On the ramparts above the gate, Robb stood with Catelyn and Howland Reed. Gray wind paced, tail twitching. When Ghost streaked ahead of Jon's party and slipped under the arch, the gray wolf threw back his head and howled. A greeting and a warning both. Jon dismounted in the yard, his legs briefly unsteady. Ghost pressed against his thigh. Gray Wine trotted down the steps to circle the white wolf, sniffing and huffing until they seemed satisfied the other was real. Twice now you've come when the world is on its head, Robb said as he descended, a crooked smile breaking through the strain. I'm beginning to associate you with bad tidings. I'll bring better ones when I find some, Jon said. For now. He drew Jeor's letter from inside his cloak and handed it over. Robb cracked the seal and read, his expression darkening. 3 blasts, he said softly. Others on the wall. Whites in numbers. A battle fought in a storm and won only just. Harwood held again, Jon added. They've turned that village into a kind of spearhead. They're testing tactics there. Glass, fire, lines of retreat. It's working. For now. And Mance? Catelyn asked. These free folk of yours? They're moving closer to the wall, Jon said. Dead at their heels. Families coming through the gate in dribbles. The gift is filling with people who can hold a spear and know what frostbite feels like. Robb looked away toward the Godswood, where the heart tree's tallest branches could be seen above the inner wall. I promised we'd send steel, he said. We sent some. It's not enough. It's more than they had, Jon replied. But you're right. It won't be enough when the main push comes. That's why I came. Jeor thinks this is only the first testing of the line. He wants you to be ready for the second. Then we will be, Robb said. He folded the letter with deliberate care. We've been mending walls. Time to mend our line to the wall as well. The War Council in Winterfell felt different with the smell of the wall still in Jon's hair. The same faces ringed the table. Robb at its head, Catelyn to his right, Howland half in shadow, the great Jon looming, Jeor Mormont grim and solid, Manderly's man neat and precise with his notes. The map between them had grown more cluttered. Stark hands had added marks for garrisons and supply caches. Jeor's previous letters had added white sightings. Jon spread Sam's latest edition on top. A rough sketch of the wall's surroundings, annotated in a tight, anxious script. "Here," he said, tapping near Old Barrow. "They set a trap, filled the place with fighters instead of farmers. The dead came, they burned them, shattered 2 others with dragonglass. They lost people, but they held." "Old Barrow burned?" the great Jon asked. "On purpose," Jon said. "Better that than watch it taken screaming. They chose the ground and the manner of its burning." "Sacrificing villages," Caitlin said quietly. "To buy time, to buy nights," Jon said. "One at a time. Jeor thinks we need more places ready to do the same, and more men willing to stand in them." Robb's mouth was a hard line. "We send men," he said. "We've already agreed. 1,000 to the wall and its castles. More as the thaw allows. We train every boy and girl who can hold a spear, from here to White Harbor. We make sure no village stands alone if the dead come knocking." "And Bolton?" Meej asked. "He'll smell weakness if you strip too much strength from south of the neck." "Bolton smells what he wants," Howland said. "What he'll see is a Stark riding north with banners at his back, not south with tail between his legs. If he moves against your mother, he'll show his hand in front of half the north." "If he moves," Robb said. "He does it knowing there are still wolves left to bite him. I'll leave enough teeth." His gaze went to Jon. "Jeor wants you for hunter bands, for lines ahead of the wall. You're sure that's where you can do the most good?" Jon thought of Harwood's well, of Old Barrow burning, of Ghost's hackles rising in the dark. "Yes," he said. "Others are clever, but they're not used to men who don't break at the first sight of them. We won't win this war with walls alone. We need hunters, scouts, people who can hit and fade and hit again." "Then that's the shape of it," Robb said. "Winterfell, the Twins, and White Harbor hold the North's heart. The Dreadfort may gnaw, but it won't swallow. The wall and the gift become our shield. You and Jeor handle the point of that shield. I'll keep sending you steel to bind to it." Caitlin watched the 2 young men, her son and the man she had not raised but who carried her husband's face, and felt the strange, quiet horror of realizing that this, not the Game of Thrones in King's Landing, was what would decide whether any of their victories mattered. "Fight your war," she said softly. "We'll keep the hearths burning as long as we can." Far to the north, beyond even Mance Rayder's shrinking ring of fires, the night had teeth. On a wind-scoured ridge overlooking both the wall and the dim, flickering embers of the wildling camp, and other sat its pale horse. Frost spread from its hooves in delicate, crystalline veins, creeping over stone and scrub alike. Below, the wall cut the world in 2. On one side, black dots moved, crows on battlements, wolves on top of ice. On the other, orange sparks marked where free folk still clung to their fires, huddled against a darkness that did not care for their songs. Closer to the wall, smaller lights burned where none had in living memory. Harwood, Old Barrow, other nameless clusters of defiance. Behind the ridge, deeper in the forest, whites waited. They did not shuffle or moan. They simply stood, snow piling on shoulders and skulls, eyes dim until called. The other tilted its head. It did not understand men's maps, their parchments and lines and tokens, but it understood heat and motion. It understood that where life clustered, it could be extinguished. Its attention fell on the new lights nearest the wall, like a predator noticing a wound in a herd's formation. It raised its spear. Unseen by human eyes, a shiver passed through the ranks of the dead. Somewhere, far from any song or story, a line shifted. At the wall, men looked up at the suddenly colder stars and told themselves the chill was only the wind. In the gift, free folk and farmers shared rough bread and sharper words, not knowing how thin the ice under them was. In Winterfell, a king in the north and a bastard crow-wolf spread maps and talked of lines and nets. Between them all, ravens flew, thin wings beating against a dark that did not care. The true war had begun long ago in secret. Now, at last, it was drawing into the open. And on both sides of the wall, for the first time in thousands of years, men were walking toward it together instead of waiting alone in their separate fears.